Hey guys, welcome back to Not For Everyone. After a 10-day vacation, we're back in the studio creating content for you. So thank you very much for watching and thank you very much for sticking around. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest marketing mistakes in the history of the world that also had the biggest impact on how we do marketing today, from the big Fortune 500 companies all the way down to the smallest startup. Of course, I'm talking about the new Coke scandal. Stick around because I'm not only going to talk about how new Coke went, but what happened after the actual Coke came back. I think not a lot of people have talked about that, but I have some really cool insights and some really cool insider information that I think you'd want to hear. So, new Coke. What was new Coke? Why did it happen? When did it happen? And what did Coca Cola and the marketing world learn from it? Let's unpack this a little bit. For everybody that's watching that's 35, 40 plus, you probably already heard about new Coke, or you've read the case study, or you have some idea of what that looked like because you probably also lived in that era. You've seen new Coke. But for anybody who's Gen Z, this is probably going to be brand new. Even if you heard about it, you've probably never actually seen it on the shelf. So a little bit of backstory before I get into the juicy stuff. So how did new Coke come to be? So in 1983, 1984, in that range, marketing was very, very, very new. Marketing was a little bit more about the Mad Men, whiskey drinking, cigar, creative ideas style marketing, rather than what you see today, which is a little bit more data-driven and more human-centric. So in 1983 and 84, marketing was about selling product. A lot of the marketing, a lot of the communication revolved around your product and not necessarily the brand. So in 1984, Coca Cola started doing taste tests. They thought, it's the Cola Wars, it's the height of the Cola Wars. So Pepsi versus Coke was at its peak. And Coca-Cola's thinking, is our product superior? Do we have a better product? And if we do, then how can we package that product and sell it to the masses better? So they started doing taste tests. So blind taste tests. What a blind taste test basically is somebody walks into a room, there's 2 cups of cola on the table, Cola A and Cola B. You take a sip of this, and you take a sip of this, and they ask you which one do you like better. From this, the marketing team at Coca-Cola gauges whether their product is better or not. So here's the problem. There's a problem with doing taste tests in general, especially when it came to Pepsi and Coke. So when you're doing a taste test, the first issue is that there is no brand. So it's purely and only the product, which means that all of the emotions that you have towards a certain brand is gone to zero. It's simply which product is superior. The second big problem with taste tests, especially blind taste tests and the one that Coca-Cola ran, is because you're taking a sip of A and a sip of B, you're picking the one which is sweeter. Why? Human beings, us, overall, if you just take one tiny sip of any type of liquid and they ask you which one you prefer, you're always going to choose the one that is more sweet. The reason is because we are mammals. So we convert glucose and fructose into energy. So we're biologically engineered to choose which one is sweeter when we have a very small sample size, like a sip. Now, if you were to, for example, drink an entire bottle of Coke, an entire bottle of Pepsi, those numbers start to shift. Which one do you prefer? Coca-Cola starts winning more. But because Pepsi in itself, the formula, is sweeter than Coke, Coke loses in a blind taste test, sip-wise. So after running thousands and thousands and thousands of blind taste tests, Coca-Cola realized, or thought they realized, that they have an inferior product. People prefer Pepsi over Coke. That was the conclusion. The conclusion is absolutely wrong. People do not prefer Pepsi over Coke. People simply prefer a very sweet cola versus a less sweet cola with one sip with no brand. So brand A and brand B. But back then again, in 1984, 83, marketing still didn't understand that emotions were involved. So what Coca-Cola did is they thought, you know what? We're losing on the product side. We got to change the formula. So they changed the Coca-Cola formula. They made it more sweet. They changed it so much that they started winning in those blind taste tests. So the gut reaction was, we're losing, make the product sweeter. They did. They started winning in the blind taste tests. So now that they know that they have a superior product or a superior product, they started marketing it as New Coke. This was when New Coke was born. So they launched New Coke in 1985. It was a fiasco. It was craziness. Just Google some of the news articles about New Coke in the 1985, 1986 newspapers. People were rioting on the streets. Literally, there was literal people on the streets calling for bring our Coke back. What happened to our Coke? And Coca-Cola, the marketing team at Coca-Cola realized that, well, they screwed up. They really screwed up. They screwed up big time. Pepsi sales started to rise. New Coke sales obviously started to drop. There was boycotts. There was riots. It was a whole big issue. The reason why is because Coca-Cola marketing team did not understand that people didn't love the product, but they loved the brand. The brand was part of the product. And when you take out that brand and the emotions that come with it, and you're just left with the product, well, consumers, us human beings, we cannot differentiate the two. For us, the product and the brand is mixed into one. And if we love something, then we love it. Even if the product might be inferior in some way, although in this case it's not, we still love the brand. So we still want to continue with that. So the Coca-Cola marketing team was dumbfounded. They were like, they had strategy meeting upon strategy meeting, trying to understand what the hell is happening, what the hell went wrong, and how can we fix it? So the quick and easy dirty solution was bring back the old Coke formula, which they did under the Coca-Cola Classic brand name. Okay? So New Coke was New Coke, and then they brought back Coca-Cola Classic. And we all remember, if you've lived in the 90s, early 90s in the US, you guys all remember the Always Coca-Cola campaign, which is part of the Coca-Cola Classic launch. It had, this cool little jingle. Do 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 do. Always Coca-Cola. If you remember that, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was the comeback of Coca-Cola Classic. So they brought back Coca-Cola in the Coca-Cola Classic form, and sales started to skyrocket. The biggest mistake in the history of marketing actually turned out to be very, very, very profitable. When they brought back Coca-Cola Classic, everything kind of shifted towards Coke Classic. All of the New Coke guys died out. They discontinued New Coke a couple years after that, so it was dead completely. They actually turned it into Coke 2, and then from New Coke to Coke 2, and then they just killed it. But Coca-Cola Classic then became just Coca-Cola, so it came back to its original form, which is the Coca-Cola you and I know today. So what happened after? And this is what's really crucial. Most of the case studies that you might see or read or look at YouTube videos, even Harvard Business Review case studies, they kind of stop at the fact that they brought back Coca-Cola Classic. But what's really important is what happened after that. So we're talking about early 90s, and the Coca-Cola marketing team understood that there are emotions involved. So we know at this point that there are emotions involved in a brand. It's not just the product superiority. Your brand also is a factor, which means there's emotions involved. And then they're looking at their entire marketing toolkit, all of the items and what they do, the segmentation methodology, the communication planning, everything that they're doing in marketing has nothing to do with the brand. It's all product based. So they quickly realized that they simply don't have the tools to manage, understand, and manage emotions, understand and manage brands, and not just manage products. So what they started doing is they started asking the really cool questions. The first thing that they realized is that they see people as consumers. So they would have things like daily drinkers or weekly drinkers. That was the segmentation model. So are you a daily drinker? Do you drink Coca-Cola every day? Are you a weekly drinker? Do you drink Coca-Cola every week? Nobody in their right mind wakes up in the morning and goes like, I'm a daily Coca Cola drinker. Fuck no, it's just not real. It's not real life. People are human beings. Coca Cola, the cola that you drink, the water, the refreshing beverage that you choose to drink is a very, very insignificant and small part of your entire life. If you look at the bigger items, family is very important. Your career is important. Friends, social life is important. Your family, so spouse, love is important, right? And then there's the secondary things, hobbies, passions, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you have in your life. And in that entire map of all of the things that are important to you, what type of beverage you drink is probably insignificant, if not more than even insignificant. So to take that little tiny insignificant dot in my entire life and try to understand who I am and how I choose and how I live my life through that tiny little window of I'm a daily drinker is ridiculous. And they understood that. They got it. They're like, okay, so we understand what the problem is now, but what's the solution? So what they started doing is they started moving towards a from human to consumer to shopper model, which is what they're still using today. So you, me, we're human beings. Number one, we are human. Regardless of, are we drinking Coke? Do you have a Visa card or a MasterCard or an Amex? Do you fly Southwest Airlines or do you prefer Delta? Do you go on vacation to Hawaii or Florida or Europe? All of these different questions, regardless of all of that, you're a human being. So how you're buying and how you're shopping is secondary. The primary is your identity, who you are as a person, who you are as a human. So this was where human-centric marketing was born. They really understood that marketing doesn't start from the consumer. It cannot be consumer-centric. It needs to be human-centric. So they started looking at people with full lives. You're a human being. What are your passions? How do you interact with your family? How do you make decisions? What motivates you in life? What are your fears? What are your dreams? So these are the types of questions they started asking. And they quickly realized that in order for Coca-Cola as a brand to have any type of position in your life, the number one key component needs to be that Coca-Cola must be inside within pop culture. So whatever is relevant for that generation, whatever is popular pop for that generation, that's where the Coca-Cola brand needs to be. And that's when they started investing heavily into brand communication and not just product communication. So of course, when you go to the supermarket, you still have 2-for-1 bottles. You still have two big Cokes with chips on it. So some promos. There's still a lot of product communication, understandably, especially when you're inside of the supermarket. But when you're outside, online, if you go to social media, they have music fests. They do music festivals. They do a whole bunch of other stuff that revolve around brand. That's part of pop culture because they understood that you are a human being. And it's not that I'm going to inject myself into the life of Coca-Cola. It's that Coca-Cola, number one, has to understand who I am. And then number two, within my life, try to find touch points where they can communicate with me and where I can engage with the brand on my terms in order for me to become a brand ambassador and me to become somebody that might be a weekly or daily drinker down the line. So human first, then consumer, then shopper. And until today, that is the model they are using. The Coca-Cola wars are over. Coke has won. It's very clear. Overall, in the refreshing beverages and carbonated soft drinks, Coca-Cola has won. Pepsi's a bigger company because they moved into snacks, right? Chips, etc. But in terms of pure cola wars, I think the war is over, and I think Coca-Cola has won. Thank you guys for sticking around. If you don't agree with anything I said, if you're a Pepsi person and you think what I'm saying is ridiculous, please let me know in the comments below and let me know why. I'll be happy to give you more information about what I've learned going through this process. And once again, if you made it this far, please subscribe and help us out. Help us create more content like this. See you next week.